Because several people were not able to be at the worship service on Sunday, April 14th, 2024, which was titled Hopes and Dreams, and in which I talked about my upcoming retirement, I was asked to record it. So those of you who would like to may also enjoy the message. The reading I chose was entitled, is from The Mushroom at the End of the World by Anna Lowenhaupt-Zeng. Disturbance is a change in environmental conditions that causes a pronounced change in an ecosystem. Floods and fires are forms of disturbance. Humans and other living things can also cause disturbance. Disturbance can renew ecologies as well as destroy them. How terrible a disturbance is depends on many things, including scale. Some disturbances are small. A tree falls in the forest, creating a light gap. Some are huge. A tsunami knocks open a nuclear power plant. Scales of time also matter. Short-term damage may be followed by exuberant growth. Disturbance opens the terrain for transformative encounters, making new landscape assemblages possible. Disturbance matters in relation to how we live. Disturbance is never a matter of yes or no. Disturbance refers to an open-ended range of unsettling phenomena. Where is the line that marks off too much? With disturbance, this is always a problem of perspective. Here ends our reading. I have a particular fondness for today's story for all ages. I have read and told and now made a little video for Butterflies Under Our Hats by Sandy Eisenberg Sasso many times. It was the story I included in the pre-candidating service I did for the UUFB search committee back in early 2016. It's a lovely little story about the theme of hope, losing it, looking for it, and finding it. Back in 2016, I interviewed with 8 congregations and pre-candidated with 2. And both UUFB and a congregation I'll call Other UU listed me as their first choice after pre-candidating. And as you know, I chose UUFB. Really, we chose each other, UUFB and me. We were each other's first choice, and we came together 8 years ago with separate and shared hopes and dreams. Some of those hopes have been realized, others have remained dreams. And what about Other UU? Well, when they learned that I had not listed them as my first choice, they turned to their second choice, who had already said yes to another UU church. It all worked out, though. They ended up settling a minister who had just received preliminary fellowship and hadn't even been able to be in search until after the first round. Now, I tell you all of this in the context of my having announced my upcoming retirement at the end of this year's first round of search. I know this news is disturbing to some. Some of you have let me know you understand and wish me well. Others have expressed concern about finding another minister, and it is true that UUFB will face some challenges in that regard. And there are a lot of congregations around the country who have just found out that their minister has accepted an invitation to candidate elsewhere and will be leaving. There are also ministers who didn't receive an invitation to candidate in the first round, who are still looking. And there are new ministers who were just welcomed into fellowship recently. I have every confidence that your fellowship board will work with the UUA Transitions Office and find a good minister for the next program year. What's a program year? It's roughly August or September through June or July, kind of like an academic year. So hang in there and let the board work through its process. In the meantime, to misquote an old Monty Python's Flying Circus comedy skit, "I'm not going yet." I remain your minister for the next several months. My last Sunday in the pulpit with you will be June 23rd, and I'll be working through the end of that month. After that, I'll be stepping back from contact with the congregation completely by the end of August, so as to clear the decks for your next minister. This is in accord with the professional guidelines or covenant for fellowshipped UU ministers. Whoever your next minister is may invite me into a covenant with them, as I have with your previous settled minister, the Reverend Nan White. Reverend Nan and I both agreed to put the good of the congregation first in that covenant and have in fact been in touch periodically for the past 8 years. She's been helpful to me at times, and I hope I've been helpful to her in return. Over the next few months, we will be able to work through 4 phases of saying goodbye, adapted from Dr. Ira Bayak's work with the dying, and I'm grateful to my colleague, Reverend Karen Johnston, for sharing this frame from her Date with Death Club curriculum. Now, while we're not saying the big goodbye of death, these can help guide our work with one another over the next few months. So what are these 4 phases or phrases? The first one is forgive me. Simply forgive me. Some of you are familiar with President George Washington's farewell speech, which was woven into the musical of Hamilton. Washington, in essence, says he's well aware of his own shortcomings, and while he can't pinpoint any mistakes, he's aware that there were mistakes, and he asks for his country's forgiveness, as he's always had their best interest at heart. So over the next few months, let's ask for one another's forgiveness. I say this to you as a group now, and if anyone wants to have a personal conversation with me, I welcome that opportunity. The second phase or phrase is I forgive you. Just as we ask one another for forgiveness, we can also offer it. If you've been here for the last 8 years or even longer, you know that I am human, and so are all of you. While we try hard, we are not always our best selves with one another. Preeminent 20th century theologian James Luther Adams wrote, "We humans are promise-making, promise-keeping, promise-breaking, and promise-remaking creatures. We make covenants, and when we break them, we come back together to remake them." This is fundamental to our Unitarian Universalist theology of covenant. And James Luther Adams has also said that church, fellowship, society, is where we come to practice being human. So this is the best place that I know to practice being promise-making, promise-keeping, promise-breaking, and promise-remaking creatures. I know there have been times when I've been disappointed with decisions made by the congregation or groups within it. And I've worked on forgiving as a way to move through that disappointment. Conversely, there have been times when I've been incredibly proud of the work of the congregation. Developing the food pantry this program year is a good example. And again, while I know that I have made mistakes, some of them I can point to, and some of them I don't even know about because nobody told me I made a mistake. I'm open to personal conversations and would be happy to make an appointment with you if you want to talk. The third phase from Ira Byock is thank you. Thank you. Gratitude. Thank you so much for these years of ministry with you. I know I'll be saying this frequently in the weeks to come. I am so grateful to have been called to this beautiful place and a great group of people. I'm grateful for your support for projects like the Habitat for Humanity Faith Build, which the SEJ and I promoted several years ago, and the aforementioned Food Pantry Project, which is a beautiful living out of our mission. I'm also grateful for your trust and support while I've spoken out at school board meetings against book banning, and when I've brought the DALO group to us to talk about their mission of promoting literacy and diversity in Beaufort. Gratitude also for your involvement in and support of the Interfaith Coalition, headed by Pastor Janine Smalls at Grace AME. I do hope Pastor Smalls will reactivate that group at some point. I'm also incredibly grateful to your support, for your support when I faced a recurrence of cancer in 2018. And several of you provided us with meals after my first big surgery. Gratitude to you also for your kindness and compassion following the death of our son just over 2 years ago, and for your support for my sabbatical soon after that. Without that sabbatical, truly, I would not have managed ministry here these past 2 years. Finally, the final phrase, as I said in my letter to members, I love you. I have loved this congregation as a whole from the beginning. Your grassroots beginning around Marge Jarvis's kitchen table closely parallels my home congregations beginning with a conversation between 3 soccer moms watching their daughters play soccer. True story. And when I began interacting with the search committee, I began seeing the individuals and falling in love with particular people. Not romantically, but you know. I still love the congregation as a whole, and I love each of you as well. And with this in mind, I've been thinking about this journey toward goodbye on which we are embarking. As poet John O'Donohue wrote, you are in this time of the interim where everything seems withheld. The path you took to get here has washed out. The way forward is still concealed from you. Much has been written about ministry transitions for both pastors and congregations. One article compared this liminal time to getting from Good Friday to Easter. In that article, author Anthony Plath noted that the stages of this time are similar to the stages of grief identified by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Say it isn't so, or denial is common, and this often takes the form of, let's just get through this as quickly as possible to minimize the pain. In my experience, and that of many other ministers, there's no shortcut. It's healthier for the end of this period in your congregation and for your beginning with your next minister, for us to acknowledge our feelings and work through them as best we can. I'm furious, anger. I literally had a member tell me the other day that they were pissed off at me. I offered a from the hip response that wasn't great, and we've since talked about it, and I think we're okay now. It's okay to be mad. I know a minister who was at the same congregation for over 40 years. Can you imagine? Over 40 years. When he retired, there were people who were just furious because they wanted him to officiate their funeral or officiate their granddaughter's wedding or dedicate their child, as yet unconceived, on Christmas Eve. That was a thing in that congregation, dedicating children on Christmas Eve. And he wasn't going to be around for those events. Remember what I said about forgiveness, though. It's needed here on all sides. What if that bargaining stage? Oh, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we doubled your salary? Not going to happen. Is there anything we can do to keep you here? At this point, no. Tom and I did not come to the decision for me to retire and for us to leave lightly. We know that in my letter, I indicated that we feel a pull back to the family, specifically our granddaughter, who is the light of our light of our life. But we also have aging parents, Tom's parents, who are in their 90s and are requiring more care and attention from us than ever before. There are 2 other Kubler-Ross stages, resignation and acceptance. And I'll save those for another Sunday, but we will get there. There is a lot to go through in our remaining time together. But please remember, I forgive you. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I love you. as we walk this path together. And let the love that holds all of us guide us forward. May it be so.